Hi, I'm Kate, this is my channel, and this is my top 5 Wednesday for books without romance. Um, I'm in my PJs, I'm home from work, I'm exhausted, I have my wine, and I've never done one of these before, so we'll see if I actually film, if I actually post it. So books without romance, I thought this would be really easy because I don't read many books where the point is the romance. I read books where usually read books where the romance is kind of secondary to the whole point. Although I do occasionally read some YA, where romance is often the point, though not always. And I do read romances usually when I'm stressed. But for the most part, I thought I don't really read books with romance until I sort of had a look, and often there are like background romances, and then there was a lot of books where I couldn't remember if there was a background romance or not. So the 5 books that I've chosen may actually have romance in them, but as far as I can remember, they don't. If you know that they do, please correct me and I can put something else in the comments to replace it instead. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood. I read this earlier this year for my book club. This book actually won the Stella Prize in 2016. The Stella Prize is kind of like the Bailey's Prize, but for Australian writers. So it's about Australian women writers. And it's turned out some pretty good stuff from what I can tell. This one is kind of all these women who have been, I suppose, in the media for, like sex scandals and things like that, basically kidnapped and put in a kind of like a prison in the middle of the Australian bush, and it's not really explained to them why they're there, what's going to happen to them or anything like that. It's kind of like a survival story. There are some strange sort of friendships that form between the women. There is some sex between prisoners and some of the guards, but it's not really a romance. It's more like opportunistic. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. And they actually really hate each other. They're just out to get what they each want. I really, really like this book until the last 10 pages when it felt like it was a completely different book, and it really ruined it for me. I actually threw the book across the room. But that's The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood. The next book that I want to talk about is Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I haven't read the second one in this series, Binti Home, and I believe the third one's about to come out. I've just read this one, but this one there is no romance. So this is a Tor.com novella, and it's about a woman who is a member of the Himba people, which is a African tribe. And she's the first one of her people to go to university, and the university that she's going to is actually on another planet. They have this tradition of using mud to cover their skin to keep clean, things like that. And it's a really big part of their culture. And so for her to leave the place where she gets this mud is a big deal. She's got a small jar of it. She takes it on the spaceship. And then on the way to the university, the spaceship is attacked. And I think she's the sole survivor other than the attacker. So yeah, no romance in that, but very, very powerful. And I really need to get a hold of Binti Home because I've heard that's pretty good too. So the third book is Planetfall by Newman. Again, I haven't read the second one. And this one is one of the ones where I think there may be like a background romance going on, but I really can't remember it. And if there is, it's really, really not the point of this book. This is about a small community of people who have gone to another planet to set up a colony. The only people there. They sort of went for, they followed like a religious guru who said that like basically the meaning of life was going to be on this planet, and then when they got there, their guru died, and they haven't been able to find their meaning of life, the answer to life, the universe, and everything. But then one day, out of nowhere, somebody walks out of the forest and introduces themselves, and it's a human being. And how did they get there? Where did they come from? So there is a community, and I think there might be some, like, people are married and stuff, but I don't think there's an actual romance. There is lots of interesting things about mental illness. Again, I really liked this book up until like the last little bit when it just seemed to become something different. So I didn't like the ending of this book, which is what has put me off from reading After Atlas, the sequel, or the companion novel, even though I know it's about different people and they're still on Earth, I think. But the ending has really put me off reading After Atlas. But I am willing to be persuaded if anybody would like to try to convince me. So my next book is a Australian young adult novel. I don't know if it's technically young adult or what you might call middle grade, but I'm going towards young adult because I think the protagonist is about 15 or 16. And that is A Single Stone by McKinlay. This book was incredible, absolutely incredible, and I specifically wanted to pick it because it's a YA book without romance, as far as I can remember. Again, there may be background romances, but I don't think there is. It's about a small community who lives kind of in a valley surrounded by mountains, and in their valley it gets really, really disgustingly cold, dangerously cold in winter, snow covering, all the way up to the ceiling, that sort of thing. And they have to go into the mountains to get kind of like coal, but from what I understand, it kind of burns on its own and it gives off heat and warmth. And so they have to go into the mountains to get this to keep warm and to survive during the winter. But the mountain is full of crevices and only very small girls can fit into the crevices. And it basically becomes a matriarchy because it's the women who have the power, but it's kind of really creepy because they pick girls who are much smaller, and these girls they have to be able to fit through the crevices, and these girls are like elevated above all else, but once they get too big, they're not there anymore. And then baby girls that are very, very small are the most amazing thing that you could possibly have. And it kind of goes into there becomes suggestions of pregnancies that are finished early. Their labour is induced early to make sure that the girls are small, and there's all sorts of creepy stuff like that. But this was amazing, and from what I can remember, there are men, but they don't really do much. I'm pretty sure it's all girls. And a group of girls who depend on each other to get through the mountain and to get back out, and it was really, really powerful. And I'm positive there's no romance. So that's A Single Stone by McKinlay. And so my final book, again, is one I read probably 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure there's no actual romance, although there's grey area, which I'll explain. But that book is The Red Tree by Kiernan. This book scared the bejesus out of me. Like, when I was reading it, I was so afraid, but it was one of those things where you put it down and you couldn't remember exactly what it was that made the hair stand up on the back of your neck, because when you thought about it later, nothing really scary happened, but when you're reading it, the tone and the atmosphere is frightening. So this is about a woman who is escaping a breakup. So she's I think she's gay. Pretty sure she was gay. And so she's just broken up with somebody, and she's a writer or an artist, and she goes into a small village and rents a house, this really old house, for a little while, and she finds a manuscript, and it's kind of written by an anthropologist about the tree in the backyard, and it's this beautiful big red tree. And then the woman who's escaping starts to hallucinate perhaps about the tree, and it's really frightening. The tree is like out to get her, which sounds silly, but it was terrifying, and gives her hallucinations. And I think she hallucinates that her ex-girlfriend is coming back, and she's hallucinating having sex with her ex-girlfriend, but she's not actually there, and it's like hallucinated hate sex, I think. And I'm pretty sure it was a hallucination, but either way, they didn't really like each other anymore. So even if she was there, they didn't like each other. But it really frightened me, this book. And I'm positive there's no actual romance. It's more hate sex and anger and longing and regret for a romance that could have been. But not real romance, not falling in love. So those are my 5 books for my top 5 Wednesday. I may or may not post this. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to drink my wine now. Have a good night.